Coin tokens, life advice hotline, we're here for you.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Boner Coin Tokens Life Advice Hotline. This is the place where the world's most profound and enlightening advice comes directly to you. Courtesy of yours truly, Dick 4. Now, as always, I am best known for having big thoughts and small solutions, and today will be no different. Because let's face it, sometimes the biggest truths come in the smallest packages, and folks, my solutions are just the right size to fit neatly into your life and change it forever. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're tuning in because you need some of that classic Dick 4 wisdom. Don't worry, you've come to the right place. You see, Boner Coin Tokens Life Advice Hotline isn't just any hotline, it's a lifeline for all of you who are drowning in your own mediocrity. And let's be real, many of you are. But that's why I'm here. I'm not here to sugarcoat things or hold your hand. No, I'm here to empower you, to drag you out of your comfort zone and into the world of the dominant and the powerful. That's what today's episode is all about. Empowerment. And this is our longest and most in-depth episode yet. The topic of empowerment is one of the most important topics that gets the least amount of attention. But I'm here to give you everything you need in one sitting. However, keep track of the chapters on the timeline and keep coming back because you need this, and more importantly, you need me. But before we dive into today's lesson, let me remind you all of one very important truth that we live by here at Boner Coin Token Productions. The deeper you go, the more shallow it gets. Now, I want you to think about that for a second. It's easy to get lost in all the noise of the world, to think that complexity is the answer, that digging deeper will reveal the ultimate truths. But the reality is, the more you dig, the more you realize that life is about simplicity. That's where I come in. I take those deep thoughts you're all struggling with, those ones that you just seem to continually fail to dominate, or at least master, and I make them manageable. I shrink them down so that even the simplest mind can understand. If you aren't fully applying all of the lessons that this Dick right here, me Dick 4, is teaching you, then you just aren't worthy of Dick. Now, let's be honest. You're here because you've been struggling. You've been trying to figure out how to make your mark in the world, how to be more assertive, how to take control of your life, and let's face it, you failed miserably, but today I'm going to change that. I'm going to ensure my advice helps you leave marks all over the place and on everyone. These dick marks will leave everyone you encounter stunned. They will want you to leave multiple dick marks on them. Time and time again. You see, I've spent my entire life mastering the art of empowerment, and not just any empowerment. I'm talking about the kind of empowerment that makes you stand out in any room, the kind that makes people stop and pay attention, the kind that makes you the alpha. Today, we're going to talk about how you too can become that dominant force in every aspect of your life, like Dick 4 is, whether it's at work, at home, or even in the line at the grocery store. But before I get into all of that, let's take a moment and give attention to this caller who has left a message on the Life Advice Hotline. Always great to hear from one of our listeners. We get a lot of calls, and this one really stood out. Let's give it a listen.
Hi, Dick. I've been listening to your podcast for a while now, and I have to say, I'm really struggling with some of your advice on empowerment. I understand the importance of confidence, but dominating every situation? I don't know. It feels like you're pushing for too much control. I work with a team, and sometimes I feel like being that assertive all the time might backfire. I don't want to alienate my coworkers or come across as a bully. Isn't there room for collaboration, for compromise? How do I balance being empowered without overstepping? Also, you tend to always focus on advice for men. What about the women who need to be empowered? Or even the men who are not as assertive as most other men can be? I'm just trying to establish a basis for all listeners to be heard and helped. Thank you for your time. This is Linda.
Well, I have to say, I appreciate you calling in and sharing your concerns. But let me stop you right there. This is exactly the kind of thinking that's holding you back. You're worried about collaboration. You're worried about compromise. You're worried about alienating your coworkers. Do you know what I hear when I listen to that? I hear weakness. I hear a Linda that most likely works in human resources with all of the other Lindas, and as everyone knows, Lindas never cross other Lindas that work in HR. Now, I don't mean to be harsh. Actually, scratch that. Yes, I do. Because sometimes the truth is harsh, and you need to hear it. This idea that empowerment has to be balanced, that you need to find some middle ground between assertiveness and compromise. It's nonsense. Empowerment is about control. It's about domination. You don't ask for permission to be in charge, you take it, and in addition, you give permission for others to follow your command. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying you should go out there and start steamrolling everyone just for the sake of it. But if you're in a situation where you feel like you need to hold back, like you need to compromise or collaborate, let me tell you something, you've already lost. Because the moment you start second-guessing yourself, the moment you start worrying about what other people think, you've given up your power. And that's the worst thing you can do. So here's my advice to you, Linda. Stop worrying about being liked. Stop worrying about alienating people. Start worrying about whether people respect you. Because respect is what gets you ahead in life. Not friendship, not collaboration. Respect. And respect only comes from dominance and demanding control of your surroundings, control of the people in those surroundings, and control of the thoughts and minds of the people that are in those surroundings. The more you dominate, the more respect you get, even if you have to force it. It's that simple. Now, let me walk you through exactly how you can take control of every situation, no matter where you are. Whether you're in a meeting at work, having dinner with your family, or just walking down the street, there are clear ways to assert your dominance and make sure everyone around you knows who's in charge. And believe me, by the end of this episode, you'll know exactly how to do it. But before we get into the real meat of today's lesson, I need to remind you of something very important. This is probably the most critical part of today's show, so listen closely. You've found yourself on the Boner Coin Token Productions YouTube channel. And that means if you're not already subscribed, if you haven't liked this video and turned on those notifications, you are doing yourself a disservice. I know what you're probably thinking. Oh, Dick, I don't need to subscribe or like or turn on notifications. I'll just come back when I need you. But that's where you're wrong. Because let me tell you something. The more people who subscribe, the more people who like, the more people who turn on notifications, the more I can be here for you. And let's be real, that's what you want, isn't it? You want Dick in your life, guiding you. You need Dick empowering you, making sure that you don't slip back into your weak, mediocre habits. So go ahead, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and turn on those notifications. Because let's face it, without me, you're just floating in the void of your own insignificance. Now that we've got that out of the way, let's get into the real heart of today's episode. How you can start applying these empowerment principles to your everyday life. You see, empowerment isn't just about feeling good. It's about taking action. It's about making sure that no matter where you are or who you're with, you're the one in control. Let's talk about public spaces first, because this is where I see so many of you failing. Miserably, I might add. You walk into a coffee shop or the grocery store or the DMV, and what do? You shrink. You make yourself small, polite, waiting in line like everyone else, hoping nobody notices you. Let me tell you right now, that's your first mistake. Empowerment ramps up before you walk through a door and is in beast mode the moment you enter a room. The way you carry yourself, the way you take up space, these things matter. When I walk into a public space, I don't just exist, I dominate. I take up as much space as possible. I don't let people crowd me or push me around. And, most importantly, I make sure everyone knows I'm there. Whether it's spreading my arms across the back of a chair, putting my bag right in the middle of the table, or a busy walkway, or simply standing tall in the middle of a crowded room staring at anyone who dares to attempt the middle with me, I make sure I am seen. But it's not just about being seen, it's about being heard. If you're not the loudest voice in the room, you're absolutely in the wrong. I don't care if you're in line at the grocery store or sitting in a restaurant. If someone else is talking louder than you, you're losing. And losing is not empowering. Winning is. And winning means owning the conversation. Winning means you have to shut that loud mouth down that no one wants to hear. You do it by talking louder because everyone wants to hear you. Now, I know some of you are sitting there, just like our caller, thinking about compromise, thinking about collaboration, thinking that there's got to be some middle ground between being empowered and alienating everyone around you. But let me tell you something, if you're balancing, if you're compromising, you're not empowered. You're neutralized. You're basic. You're at risk of obscurity. Empowerment isn't about finding a middle ground. It's about making the ground under you and the ground under them yours. There's no room for compromise when it comes to being in charge of your own life or commanding the lives and actions of others. And if you're still holding on to that soft idea of balance, well, you're going to continually lose at everything you do, no exceptions. So let me take you by the hand and lead you into the world of real empowerment, starting with how you behave in public spaces. This is the real-world training ground where most people fail every single day. Let's start with something as simple as walking into a room. I don't care if it's a restaurant, a coffee shop, a business meeting, or the grocery store. You've got to walk in like you own the place. And Linda, this is universal and applicable to either of the sexes, even if the male and more dominant sex is able to do it better. I'm talking head up, shoulders back, eyes straight ahead. None of this polite shuffling, none of this making yourself small. You think that makes people like you? No, it does not. It just makes them forget you even exist. Empowerment starts with presence. You have to take up space, and not just physically, but in the minds of everyone around you and in the minds of everyone they love, because that's how strong your influence needs to be. So strong they have no choice but to spread it, even by accident. Take the grocery store, for example. I know what you're probably thinking. It's just grocery shopping, Dick. What does that have to do with empowerment? Let me stop you right there. You see, every single interaction in your life is an opportunity to assert dominance, and the grocery store is no different. If you're wandering through those aisles, letting people block your path with their carts or stepping aside because someone else got there first, you've already lost. You should just lay down and be that doormat that you are acting like, and worse, the doormat that everyone else sees you as. When I walk into a grocery store, I don't just shop. I command the aisles. I control the bystander flow. I push that cart like it's a chariot, and everyone else is just an obstacle in my way. And I don't wait for people to move. I make them move. If someone's standing there deciding between two brands of cereal, I don't tiptoe around them and say, "Excuse me," or "I'm sorry," like some Nancy. No, I push my cart right into that space. That lets them know that I'm not here to wait. That's empowerment. You're not apologizing for taking up space, you're claiming what's yours. And if you want to assert more heavily, an option is to simply claim all of the cereal and tell that aisle-blocking space hog to move on. And don't even get me started on the checkout line. If you're standing there quietly, waiting for your turn with your head down, you're doing it wrong. You've got to dominate the interaction from the moment you step up to that register. Look the cashier in the eyes. Don't smile too much, just enough to show you're in control. And don't engage in their small talk. They're not there to make conversation with you. They're there to serve you. You're not just another customer in line. You're the alpha customer. If they don't recognize that immediately, then pull a Karen and demand the manager. While you're waiting for the manager, pull out your phone and show them that you are giving them a 1-star Google review. Explain forcefully that you don't have the option for negative stars, or else you would use them. Then you cause a scene that results in them both getting fired, and all of those boxes of cereal that you dominated into your possession. You now get those for free. If you're going to pull the Karen card, you have to ensure that you out-Karen all of the Karens. But here's the thing, empowerment isn't just about being loud and pushy, it's about making sure everyone around you understands that you're the one in charge. Our caller mentioned she's worried about alienating her coworkers. Well, if you're worried about alienating people, that just means you're not leading them hard enough, and you haven't forced their respecting you nearly at the level you need to be. You don't have to worry about being liked when you're respected. Let me tell you a little story about how I mastered the art of workplace empowerment. This one's for you, caller, since you seem to be concerned about how team dynamics work. You see, I was once in a job where everyone thought that collaboration was the key to success. We had team meetings where everyone took turns. raising their hands like we were back in kindergarten. It was ridiculous. Something had to be done. Someone had to take charge. I knew I couldn't sit back and let this circus of politeness control the room. So, what did I do? I started talking over people. Did I wait for my turn? No, I did not. I made it my turn. I interrupted. I spoke louder. I filled the room with my voice until it was clear who was in control. And you know what happened? People started listening. People started following. Why? Because I wasn't sitting there waiting for permission. I was taking what was mine, and they were falling into their proper roles as sheep, looking to me as their shepherd. There was one meeting in particular where I knew I had to make a bold move. The CEO was standing at the front of the room, giving some long-winded speech about the company's future. Everyone else was nodding along, waiting for him to finish, but not me. I saw my moment and I took it. I stood up right in the middle of his speech and started talking about my vision for the company. Did I wait for him to wrap it up? No, I did not. I made sure everyone knew that my voice mattered more than whatever was coming out of his mouth. Now, I know what you're thinking. Dick, that sounds crazy. Won't that get me fired? Let me tell you something. True empowerment is about making yourself irreplaceable. If you're bold enough, confident enough, and loud enough, they won't get rid of you. They'll promote you. They'll have to. It's guaranteed because that's how it works. People respect power, not politeness. You don't climb the ladder by following the rules. You climb it by breaking them in a way that makes everyone look to you as the leader, a maverick, an inspiration to all. But the thing is, they put these titles on you because they respect you. They respect and they fear you, so much so that they dare not speak your name. So, Linda, you mentioned that you work with a team and you're afraid that being too assertive might alienate them. Let me put it this way. If your team isn't following you, you're not being assertive enough. You need to stop worrying about whether you're stepping on toes and start worrying about whether people are respecting you. Respect doesn't come from compromise. It comes from domination, and anything less than full, unadulterated respect is a serious form of disrespect. Are you hearing me, Linda? By not asserting, you are allowing them to disrespect you, and I don't blame them. I blame you. And this brings me to the most important part of today's lesson: asserting dominance in every interaction, even the ones you think don't matter. I've already talked about how you can take control in public spaces and at work. But now let's talk about the one place where most people fail miserably: at home. You see, a lot of you think that empowerment stops when you walk through the door of your house. You think you can relax, take it easy, let your spouse or your kids have a say in what happens. Wrong. Empowerment doesn't take a break when you get home. In fact, home is where you should be the most empowered, because people who share a bed with you, or those who came into existence by way of your perfectly and powerfully placed seed, seem to think that they are not as insignificant as everyone else. This is a problem for you. I know what you're thinking. But Dick, isn't it important to compromise with your family, to have a partnership and solidify long-lasting relationships and provide a safe harbor of understanding and love? Sure, if you want to lose control of your household, if you want to let chaos reign, go ahead, compromise. But if you want to run a tight ship, if you want your household to function like a well-oiled machine, you need to make it clear who's in charge. In my domain, there's no debate. I make the decisions and everyone else falls in line. If my spouse has an opinion, I'll listen. Of course I'll listen. But at the end of the day, the final decision is mine. That's how you keep the peace. That's how you maintain order. And my kids, they know better than to challenge me. They've been raised to understand that I am the alpha of the house, the alpha of the yard, the alpha of our entire neighborhood. And any challenge to my authority is met with swift correction. It's not about being mean. It's about being clear. There's a hierarchy, and my throne is at the top. Now, I know a lot of you listening are probably thinking, but Dick, this sounds harsh. Shouldn't empowerment be about lifting others up, about being supportive? Sure, if you want to empower others at the expense of your own power, but let me tell you something. True empowerment isn't about handing out pieces of your control. It's about maintaining as much of it as possible while others fall in line. You allow them to benefit from your power, but they don't get to share it. And don't even get me started on pets. If your dog runs your house, then you've already failed. My dog doesn't make a move unless I say so. You see, empowerment doesn't just apply to humans, it's a universal law and nature must abide. If you're in charge, everything, people, animals, even the environment around you, reacts to your dominance. That's how I've trained my dog to be the alpha among alphas. He knows I'm in charge, and because I've empowered him with that understanding, he's a leader too. That's how deep my methods go and how easily they are understood and implemented. So-called social norms and general behavioral accountability are the enemies. They choke the power right out of you. But not out of Dick and not out of Dick's dog. Now I want to circle back to something that Linda mentioned earlier, this idea that you can be too assertive. Let me put it delicately, there's no such thing as too assertive. You either take control or you don't. And if you're not taking control, someone else is. So, if you find yourself in a situation where you're worried about being too bold, too aggressive, or too dominant, remind yourself of one simple and absolute truth. The more assertive you are, the more empowered you become. The more empowered you are, the more respect you command. And the more respect you command, the more control you have over your life and the lives of others. Control is key. Self-control is important, but more important is the ability to skillfully and unapologetically control those around you. That's what empowerment is really about. It's about making sure you're always the one in control, no matter where you are or who you're dealing with. And if you follow these techniques, taking up space, dominating conversations, asserting yourself in every interaction, you're going to find that people will start to follow you. They won't have a choice. Now that we've gone through some of the most important techniques for asserting dominance, I want you to go out into the world and start practicing them. Whether you're at the grocery store, at work, or at home, make sure you're the one in charge. Take up space. Be the loudest voice in the room. Make decisions and don't apologize for them. That's how you win. That's why you're here. And before we move on to the next part of the show, let me remind you once more. You're listening to Boner Coin Tokens Life Advice Hotline. If you haven't already, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. The more you do that, the more I can be here for you, guiding you, empowering you, making sure you're living up to your full potential. Because, remember, at Boner Coin Tokens Life Advice Hotline, we believe in one truth. The deeper you go, the more shallow it gets. Now let's get ready to dive even deeper. Now that we've gone over the basics of empowerment, taking up space, owning conversations, and making decisions without apology, it's time to go a little deeper. And trust me, this is where it gets fun. Because real empowerment isn't just about dominating the obvious situations. It's about dominating the mundane, the everyday moments that most people ignore. These are the moments that separate the truly empowered from the weak. Take something as simple as waiting rooms. You might think a waiting room is a place where nothing happens, where you're just sitting there flipping through old magazines waiting for your name to be called. But that's where you're wrong. A waiting room is an opportunity to dominate the space, to let everyone around you know that you're not just another name on the list, you're the one in charge. The next time you find yourself in a waiting room, whether it's at the doctor's office, the DMV, or wherever, you need to walk in with the same attitude you would bring to any other space. You take up space and you do it boldly. Don't sit quietly in the corner with your knees together and your hands in your lap like you're waiting for permission to exist. Sit down in the most prominent seat you can find, or if one is not prominent enough, you move everything around to make one. You spread out, put your arms on the armrests like you own the place. Let everyone around you know that you're not there to wait. You're there to command. Whatever the reason you are there for, you are not waiting for your name to be called. They are waiting for your permission to call your name. If there's a TV in the room, guess what? You decide what's on. Don't sit there watching whatever garbage they have playing on the screen. Get up, walk over, and change the channel to something that asserts your dominance. Sports, news, something aggressive, something bold. Let people know you're in control of their viewing experience. And if anyone gives you a sideways look, good. That means they know who's in charge. And here's the kicker. If someone's name gets called before yours, don't just sit there like a loser waiting for your turn. Stand up, make your presence known. Walk around the room like you've already been called. like you're the next in line no matter what, because remember, lines are for the weak, lines are for the soft. Make sure the receptionist knows who you are. No, I said that wrong. She already knows who you are. Reiterating to her how powerful you are is the play at that moment. Dominance isn't about waiting patiently. It's about making sure everyone knows you're ready to take what's yours. But let's not stop there. Let's take it to the next level. I want to talk to you about something even more ridiculous, because that's where true empowerment really shows up. I'm talking about dominating spaces where no one else is even thinking about empowerment. Spaces like public restrooms. Yeah, you heard me. Restrooms. Now, I know what you're thinking. Dick, surely not the bathroom. But let me tell you something. If you're not asserting your dominance, even in the restroom, you're leaving power on the table. I did an entire 25-minute podcast on exactly how to control and assert at the urinal. But for Linda's sake, I'm going to do a Cliff Note version for those who sit down to pee, both male and female. When you walk into a public restroom, most people just want to get in and get out as quickly as possible. They want to avoid eye contact, stay in their own little world, and not be noticed. That's where they're going wrong. The restroom is a prime opportunity to show that you're the one in control. You walk in like you own the place. Take your time. Don't rush. You want to use the most prominent stall or the largest urinal, the one that everyone else is too timid to use. If there's a line, you make it known that you're not waiting like the rest of the sheep. And if you're in a situation where there are multiple people in the restroom at once, don't be afraid to make some noise. Assert yourself. Cough loudly, clear your throat. Let people know you're there. Eye contact is key. Most people avoid it in the restroom, but that's a sign of weakness and you cannot allow it. You look people in the eye when you walk past them. You acknowledge their presence while making sure they know they don't matter nearly as much as you do. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. But Dick, what if people think I'm weird for doing this? Let me stop you right there. You're not here to worry about what people think. You're here to assert your dominance by wielding your power and taking the power of others away. If people are uncomfortable, if they're thrown off by your confidence, good. That means you're doing it right. This is where most people fail at empowerment. They're too concerned about making others uncomfortable. But here's the thing. Real empowerment is uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable for the people around you because it reminds them that they're not in control. And it's uncomfortable for you at first because you've been conditioned to play nice, to stay small, to not make waves. But if you want to be truly empowered, you've got to push past that discomfort. You've got to get comfortable with making other people uncomfortable. Speaking of making people uncomfortable, let's talk about social gatherings. You know what I'm talking about. Parties, dinners, networking events. All those situations where you're expected to mingle and be pleasant. Most people think these are opportunities to make friends, to connect, to find common ground. Wrong. They are battlegrounds. Opportunities to show everyone in the room that I'm the one they need to be paying attention to, that I don't settle for anything or anyone. When I walk into a social gathering, do I wander around aimlessly, making small talk with every random person who crosses my path? No, I do not, and neither should you. I walk in with a mission. I scan the room for the most important, aka most self-righteous person there, the one wrongly perceived to have the most influence. The one who commands the attention of others, and I take them down. Now, I don't mean physically, though I could if I had to. I mean socially. You walk up to them, interrupt whatever conversation they're having, and make yourself the center of attention. You dominate that interaction. You don't let them lead the conversation, you lead it. You make sure that by the end of the night, everyone in the room is talking about you. But you also make sure they are talking about that person too, except they are expressing their pity for them and their much-needed fall from the unearned grace that they were falsely enjoying. I did this once at a high-profile networking event. The CEO of a major company was holding court, surrounded by all these sycophants just waiting for their chance to speak. I didn't wait for an invitation. I walked straight into the middle of that circle, cut off whatever boring anecdote he was telling, and introduced myself like I was the one who called the meeting. Within 5 minutes, everyone was looking at me, listening to me, and by the end of the night, the CEO was following my lead. I was offered his job, and I turned it down. Do you know why? Because I am above that. That's how you take control of a room, and it doesn't matter if you know the person or not. It doesn't matter if you've got anything in common with them. What matters is that you own the interaction, which by proxy means you own them. You don't wait for an opening, you create the opening. You take what's yours and you make sure everyone knows it. Now, I know this might seem extreme to some of you. You might be sitting there thinking, but Dick, this all sounds exhausting. Do I really have to assert my dominance in every situation? That answer is yes. Empowerment isn't something you turn on and off. It's not a switch you flip when it's convenient. It's a lifestyle. You're either empowered or you're not. There's no middle ground. Look, if you want to be the person who fades into the background, who lets life happen to them, go ahead. Keep sitting quietly in the corner. Keep letting other people take the lead. Keep playing nice. If that's what you want, then go listen to people like Tony Robbins or Steve Gutzler. Good for you. You paid for the opportunity to learn how to stay mediocre. But don't come crying to me when you find yourself being passed over for promotions, ignored in conversations, and forgotten in social settings. Because that's what happens when you're not in control. But if you want to be the person people remember, the person people respect, even if they don't like you, then you've got to take control of every situation, every moment, every interaction. You've got to be unapologetically empowered. You've got to make people uncomfortable. You've got to own the room, whether it's a boardroom, a waiting room, or even a damn restroom. And I graciously share this information for free. I allow you to partake in it because that's just another way that I establish my dominance. I give you permission to be better, and I don't charge you for it. Now let me tell you about one more place where most people completely drop the ball: family gatherings. I'm talking about those big holiday dinners, those reunions, those events where everyone's supposed to get along and be nice. You know the type. Everyone sits around, being polite, listening to Aunt Betty's boring stories, letting Uncle Jim dominate the conversation because he's the oldest one in the room. Do I allow this to happen? No, I do not. When I walk into a family gathering, I take control immediately. I don't sit back and let the conversation drift aimlessly from one dull topic to the next. I steer it. I make sure the focus is on me and what I have to say. If someone else tries to take over, I interrupt. If someone starts telling a story, I make sure mine is better, louder, and more interesting. And if someone has a problem with it, that's their issue, not mine. You see, family gatherings are just another stage where you must prove your dominance. And if you're not the one in control, then someone else is, and that is unacceptable. That is a sin. That is a mockery of you and everything about you. Now, some of you might be thinking, but Dick, isn't that rude? Shouldn't you be more respectful of your family? Let me stop you right there. Respect goes two ways. 1, they freely give you respect because of your aura. 2, you extract their respect by any means necessary. If you're not commanding respect from your family, then you're not being empowered. And if you're worried about hurting feelings or stepping on toes, then you've already lost. Empowerment isn't about making people feel good. It's about making sure they know you're in charge and there is nothing they can do to change that. And here's the thing. Once you start asserting your dominance, people will respect you more. They might not like it at first. Hell, they might never like it. But they'll respect you, and that's what matters. They'll start looking to you for decisions, for guidance, for leadership. They'll start deferring to you in every conversation. Why? Because you've proven that you're the one in control, the one they have to look up to, the one they want to emulate, but will always fall short. So, let's recap these last few parts. Empowerment isn't just about the big moments. It's about the small, everyday situations where most people don't even realize they're losing power. It's about taking up space in every room you walk into, whether it's a waiting room, a restroom, or a family gathering. It's about owning the conversation in every interaction, whether it's at work, at a party, or even in line at the grocery store. It's about asserting your dominance in every situation, no matter how mundane or ridiculous it might seem. And if you're not doing all of that, well, then you're not really living an empowered life. But don't worry, that's why I'm here. That's why you're listening to Boner Coin Token's Life Advice Hotline, where I, Dick 4, guide you toward a life of unapologetic empowerment. If you're still feeling a little unsure about how to apply these techniques, That's okay. It's going to take practice. It's going to take time, but I promise you, the more you assert your dominance, the more you take control, the easier it will become. And let me remind you once more to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because you need more of this in your life. You need me to keep reminding you how to stay empowered, how to keep taking control of every situation. And the more people who subscribe, the more I can be here for you. And let's be honest, you need more Dick for in your life. And don't forget, folks, here at Boner Coin Tokens Life Advice Hotline, we live by one simple truth. The deeper you go, the more shallow it gets. Keep that in mind as you go out there and dominate your world. Now we're going to talk about how to turn the tables when you're not in control. We've all been there. Moments where you feel like someone else is calling the shots and you're just along for the ride. Not anymore. Stay with me because I'm going to show you how to flip the script and take back control, no matter what situation you're in. Now, some of you might be thinking, Dick, I get it. Empowerment in public spaces, at work, at home, even in the bathroom. But what about situations where I'm supposed to be, more sensitive, more understanding? Aren't there times when you should back down, be a little more, collaborative? What? Wrong. There is never a time for backing down. Empowerment knows no boundaries. In fact, let me tell you about a little experience I had recently at a women's empowerment conference. Now, I wasn't exactly invited to this event, but as we all know by now, I don't wait for invitations. Invitations are for people who need permission. Empowered people do not need permission. So, when I heard there was a women's empowerment seminar happening nearby, I knew I had to step in. Why? Because if anyone needs my advice on real empowerment, it's women. And let's be honest, they need a lot of help in that department. Is that statement uncouth? No, it is not. You need to be more realistic. You need to have thicker skin. You need to operate in true reality. I walked in, unannounced, right in the middle of some speech about finding your inner voice or some nonsense like that. The room was full of women, all nodding along, eating up this drivel about empowerment being about embracing vulnerability and working together as equals. It was pathetic. I could feel the lack of real leadership in that room the moment I walked in. So, what did I do? Well, I did what any true alpha would do. I took over. I didn't wait for the speaker to finish. I walked straight up to the front of the room, grabbed the microphone, and said, "Ladies, listen up. You've been misled. Empowerment isn't about vulnerability. It's not about finding your inner voice or collaborating with others. It's about dominion. It's about taking control and making sure everyone else knows you're in charge." And let me tell you, they were shocked. You could hear a pin drop. But I wasn't finished. Oh no. I told them that everything they thought they knew about empowerment was wrong. I said, "You want to be empowered? Then stop worrying about how people perceive you. Stop trying to be likable. Stop waiting for permission. You need to take control of every interaction, every room you walk into, and never apologize for it." Now, I know what you're thinking. Dick, did they actually listen to you? Of course they did, because once they heard what real empowerment sounds like, they realized that they'd been playing small their entire lives. They'd been sold this idea that empowerment is about being strong together or finding strength in vulnerability. But that's a lie. Empowerment isn't about feelings. It's about control. It's about making sure everyone else knows who's in charge, and that is you. And don't think I'm just talking about the women in that room. There were a few men there too. Effeminate men, to be exact. You know the type. Soft, delicate, afraid to raise their voices or take up space. And these poor guys, they were lost, completely directionless. So of course, I took it upon myself to help them too, because I'm nothing if not generous with my wisdom. Now, most people at a women's empowerment conference would tiptoe around these men, treating them like delicate flowers, afraid of saying anything that might hurt their feelings. Not me. I looked these men in the eye and said, "You want to be empowered? Then stop acting like you need permission to exist. You're not here to blend in. You're here to dominate, just like everyone else. Stop shrinking. Take up space. Use your voice. And for embarrassment's sake, stop being so soft." I made them practice power poses right there in the middle of the conference. I said, Spread your legs. Stand tall. Puff out your chest. This is how you take up space. And you know what? They did it. At first, they were hesitant, awkward, but by the end of the session, those effeminate men were standing taller, speaking louder, and finally learning what it means to be truly empowered. I'm not saying they transformed overnight, but they got the message. They realized that empowerment isn't about embracing your softness or finding balance like they had been told. Empowerment is about claiming your space, and not just physical space, but mental and emotional space too. It's about making sure that no matter who you are, you're the one in control. I can't say that enough. It's the most simple rule that almost everyone fails to follow. And the women? Oh, they got it too. By the end of the conference, they weren't sitting there, politely nodding along to meaningless platitudes about empowerment. Not at all. They were interrupting each other, taking charge, speaking out of turn, cutting each other off. It was beautiful. They finally understood that real empowerment isn't about collaboration. It's about domination. And look, I know what you're thinking. Dick, isn't that a bit much? Sure, it might seem like a lot to people who've been conditioned to play nice, but empowerment isn't nice. It's not comfortable. And it's definitely not about making other people feel good. It's about making sure you're the one in control of every room you walk into, every conversation you have, and every decision that gets made. It's your responsibility to maintain order and the hierarchy of your social construct. Let me tell you, by the time I left that conference, the whole room was buzzing. They didn't know what hit them, but they knew one thing for sure. They'd been given a gift. The gift of true empowerment, the kind that can only come from someone who understands what it means to dominate every situation, that someone is Dick for, that someone should be you. Now, I want to say something to our caller, Linda, who was worried about being too assertive with her coworkers. Listen up, because this applies to you. If you're sitting in a meeting thinking about how you can be a little more assertive without stepping on anyone's toes, you have failed. By the time you are thinking that, it is already too late. You must always be ready. There's no such thing as too assertive. There's no such thing as too dominant. The only thing you should be worried about is if people are following your lead and if you are receiving the appropriate amount of respect. And if they're not, that means you're not being assertive enough. Now, I know what you're thinking. Dick, you helped those women and effeminate men in person, but you are forgetting about all of us effeminates that are listening. To that I say, no, I have not. I would never leave out the effeminate men listening to this podcast, because you need my help too. You've probably been told your whole life that it's okay to be soft, that you don't need to change who you are to be empowered. Well, guess what? That's a lie. If you want to be empowered, you've got to toughen up. Stop apologizing for taking up space. Stop waiting for permission to speak. Stop blending into the background like you don't matter. At that women's conference, I didn't let those men get away with being timid. I made them stand up, spread their legs, raise their voices, and own their space. It wasn't easy for them. They were uncomfortable. But you know what? They started to get it. They started to see that if they kept playing small, they were never going to be respected. They were never going to be empowered. Empowerment isn't about fitting in. It's about standing out, making sure everyone around you knows that you're the one in control, that you're the only one they should be following. I even made them practice interrupting people mid-sentence. I said, if you're waiting for someone to finish talking, you're not in charge. You've got to take the conversation by the throat and make it yours. And they did it. By the end of the day, those men weren't just speaking up. They were cutting people off, making sure their voices were the loudest in the room. And that's when I knew they were finally starting to understand what true empowerment feels like. So what's the lesson here? Whether you're a woman, an effeminate man, or anyone else who's been told to tone it down, to play nice, to wait your turn, you need to stop listening to that nonsense. Empowerment isn't about waiting for your moment. It's about taking it. It's about making sure that no matter who you are, you're the one in control. And if anyone tries to tell you that you're being too assertive, too dominant, or too loud, just remember, they are the problem, not you. Because the world belongs to the empowered, and if you're not taking control of every situation, someone else will. And trust me, you don't want that. The more you internalize that, the more I can be here for you, helping you become the most empowered version of yourself. And let's be real, you need more Dick 4 in your life. Because remember, at Boner Coin Tokens Life Advice Hotline, we live by one simple truth. The deeper you go, the more shallow it gets. Next up, we're going to talk more deeply about what to do when you're not in control. You've all been in situations where someone else is calling the shots and you feel like you've lost your power. Well, I'm going to show you how to flip the script and take back control no matter what situation you're in. Now, if you've been paying attention, and you better have been paying attention, you've learned a lot about dominating every space you enter. Whether it's a conference room, a public restroom, or even your own family gathering, you now know how to take control and make sure everyone around you knows who's in charge. But let's talk about something a little trickier. Let's talk about what to do when you find yourself in a situation where you're not in control. I know, how could that possibly happen if you're following my advice? Well, sometimes, despite your best efforts, you find yourself in a situation where someone else is calling the shots. Maybe it's your boss at work. Maybe it's some loudmouth at a social gathering. Or maybe you've stumbled into one of those situations where the power dynamics are already stacked against you, like a formal dinner where you're supposed to respect someone else's authority. Let me be clear, just because you're not in control at first doesn't mean you can't flip the script and take back what's yours. And let me tell you, flipping the script is one of the most powerful moves you can make in the world of real empowerment. Let me give you an example of how I did this once at a corporate event. Now, this was one of those stuffy, buttoned-up affairs where everyone is expected to follow protocol and defer to leadership. The CEO was supposed to give the keynote speech, and everyone was expected to sit there quietly and applaud politely when he was done. But you know me, I wasn't about to let someone else steal the spotlight. So what did I do? I sat there waiting for the perfect moment, and right as the CEO was getting into the heart of his speech, I stood up and started clapping. I know what you're thinking. Dick, why would you clap in the middle of someone's speech? Well, I wasn't clapping for him, I was clapping for me. I was clapping because I had already decided that my presence was the most important thing in that room, and I wasn't going to let some boring CEO hold everyone's attention when I could be holding it myself. Now, here's the key to flipping the script. When I stood up and clapped, everyone else followed. You see, people are sheep. They don't know who's in charge unless you show them. And when they saw me stand up, bold and unapologetic, they followed my lead. The CEO didn't know what hit him. By the time he realized what was happening, the entire room was clapping, and he was no longer the center of attention. I was. That's how you flip the script. You take a moment where the power seems to be out of your hands, and you snatch it back with confidence, boldness, and absolutely zero regard for the so-called rules of the situation. And the best part? Everyone thinks it's their idea to follow you. They don't even realize you're leading them until it's too late. Now, I know some of you are probably thinking, Dick, that sounds risky. What if it doesn't work? What if they don't follow you? And to that, I say, if you're worried about failure, you've already failed. The key to flipping the script is to act with complete confidence. You have to believe deep down in your bones that people will follow your lead, and when you believe it, they will. Let's talk about another situation where I flipped the script, this time at a wedding. Now, weddings are tricky because there's a lot of social pressure to play nice, to follow the schedule, to let the bride and groom be the center of attention. But here's the thing, no matter how important the date is for someone else, you should never let an opportunity to assert your dominance pass by. That would be irresponsible and reckless. I was at this wedding where, again, the best man was giving some long, emotional speech about friendship, love, and all that sentimental garbage. Everyone was emotionally leaning in, hanging on his every word. But I knew that I couldn't let this go on. So I stood up, just like before, and started talking over him. I didn't raise my voice or make a scene. I just started talking, and soon enough, people were looking at me instead of him. What did I talk about? Well, it didn't matter. I think I made some joke about marriage or told a story that was loosely related to the bride and groom. The content didn't matter. What mattered was that I took back control of the room. I flipped the script on that best man, and by the end of it, the bride and groom were thanking me for making the evening so memorable. You see, they didn't even realize I had hijacked their wedding. They just knew I had added to the experience. That's the beauty of flipping the script. You turn someone else's moment into your moment, and they'll thank you for it. Now, let's talk about something a little more day-to-day, something you can use in your everyday life. Flipping the script in small social settings. Maybe you're at a dinner party or a work lunch, and the conversation has clearly been taken over by someone else. It could be a know-it-all coworker, a loud family member, or some random person who loves the sound of their own voice. Normally, people would tell you to be patient, to wait for your turn, to let them have the floor. But we both know that's not how real empowerment works. So what do? You flip the script. And the way to do that is simple. You interrupt. Don't wait for a natural pause or an opening in the conversation. Create the opening. Cut them off mid-sentence and start talking about something completely different. Trust me, nothing throws people off more than an unexpected interruption, especially if you do it with confidence. They'll be too shocked to react, and before they know it, you've taken over the conversation. I did this once at a company dinner. We were all sitting around listening to some blowhard go on and on about his latest vacation or whatever boring nonsense he thought was important. No one was even really paying attention, but no one had the guts to interrupt him either. That's where I come in. Right in the middle of his sentence, I cut him off and started talking about my latest project at work. And you know what happened? The whole table turned their attention to me. The guy didn't even realize what happened. He just sat there, mouth open, trying to figure out how he lost control of the conversation. That's the power of flipping the script. But it's not just about interrupting. It's about owning the new direction of the conversation. Once you've interrupted, you've got to keep going. Don't let anyone else try to take it back. You steer the conversation wherever you want it to go. Make it about you. Make it about something you care about. Hell, make it about nothing at all. The point is, you're in control and they're just along for the ride. Now, I know some of you are probably sitting there thinking, but Dick, isn't that rude? Isn't it disrespectful to interrupt people like that? Let me tell you something. Respect is earned through dominance. I know we were taught from elementary school that manners, falling in line, being a cog in the machine, and all the other government mind control BS is what we believe to be the path to success. Does Dick 4 subscribe to that way of thinking? No, he does not. Do those lies have a grasp on this Dick? No, they do not. This Dick here is not soft. This Dick, the one in this room right here, is sturdy and stands up firm. This Dick is here to help you reach a level of elevation you have never enjoyed before. I don't know about the other Dicks that try to penetrate you with this level of forcefulness, but this Dick is one you can and should hold on tight to, because this Dick will never leave your business unfinished as long as you are willing to come with me. People don't respect you because you sit quietly and wait your turn. They respect you because you take what's yours. And if you're worried about stepping on toes, then you're not really serious about being empowered, are you? Give me an example where someone actually gained respect and garnered respect without forcefully demanding attention, but instead by sitting there quietly. You can't. You might think you have an example, but you don't, because it never has happened, ever, and it never will. So why are you continuing to do that on a daily basis? Let's talk about a more specific scenario. Family gatherings. We've all been there. You're sitting around the dinner table and some relative, usually that one uncle who thinks he knows everything, starts dominating the conversation. Maybe they're telling stories, maybe they're giving their unwanted opinion on politics or whatever the hot topic of the day is. Everyone else sits there nodding along, pretending to care, just waiting for him to shut up. But you're not going to sit there quietly. You're going to flip the script. How do you do that? It's simple. You don't just interrupt, you take over the entire conversation. It's not enough to just cut them off. You've got to shift the attention entirely. Maybe you stand up and make a toast. Maybe you crack a joke that derails whatever serious point they were trying to make. Or maybe you just start talking louder and faster until they can't keep up. The goal is to make sure that by the end of the night, everyone is listening to you. And if they're not, well then you haven't been bold enough. One time at a family reunion, my uncle, let's call him Uncle Bob, was going on and on about his latest trip to some national park. Everyone was zoning out, but no one had the guts to stop him because of some kind of ridiculous Nazi-style social construct about respecting your elders. Does Dick 4 subscribe to this obtuse ideology? No, he does not. So I stood up, raised my glass, and said, you know what's better than national parks? Las Vegas. And let me tell you about my last trip there. I went on about gambling, strippers, fancy hotels, and elaborate shows. I even claimed to have designed an entire water show at the Bellagio Casino that involved me being in the water and conducting the show, of which I added animatronic dolphins and real elephants. As everyone knows, dolphins and elephants do not work well together in water shows, so one species had to be animatronic. Dolphins as robots are harder to control, but not harder for Dick 4. Nothing is hard for Dick, except for Dick. So, I went with dolphins to prove the point. Was any of that true? No, it was not. I only drove past Las Vegas on Interstate 15 4 years ago. But that did not matter because it served the purpose I needed it to serve in commanding control and asserting dominance. Within seconds, everyone had forgotten about Uncle Bob's boring story and was hanging on my every word. By the time I was done, Uncle Bob was completely sidelined and the family was asking me for more stories. That's how you flip the script. That's how you put your family in their rightful place of the family hierarchy, which is anywhere under you. That is how you assert your power and force your will over people passively but effectively and have them love you more for it. And here's the best part. People like it when you flip the script. They might act shocked at first, but deep down, they're relieved. You've saved them from boredom. You've given them something interesting to focus on. And whether they realize it or not, they'll start looking to you to lead the conversation in the future. They will also forever carry feelings of regret that you were not their leader from birth, because that is where greatness truly begins. How you exit the womb, which of course is on your terms, and then how you control the delivery room, the doctors, the entire maternity floor, all of that matters in setting up your life for greatness. You are just learning that now, and that's okay. You knew coming here that you were going to have to play catch-up. You knew that keeping up with Dick 4 was impossible, but that does not mean you don't continually try every day. I tell you all of that to drive home the point. That's the power of flipping the script. You turn a situation where you were not in control, which means it was an out-of-control spiral. You flipped it into a situation where you're leading the charge. Because here is the thing. People naturally want to be led and controlled. They desire a monarch, and that's where you come in. Dick 4 is here to help you break the mindset that you have been living in. These lies and mind control designs that you are free to make your own choices and blah blah blah. You are a robot, a drone, and a pawn in the grand scheme of life. But we can change that. You can take what's yours, just like I do. This is empowerment. This is the point of this whole podcast. By now, you should start to feel the desire to want to have the want, to start becoming empowered. It is the first and most important step of your awakening. It's as if you are waking up from being in the matrix and learning that there is an entire world of thinking that has been kept from you. Except the matrix is fake and this is real. By infringing on the free will of others, you are actually setting them free, because it's actually what they want. Excuse me, I misspoke again. It is in fact what they want, but more correctly, it is what they need. People need to have your power, your dominance, your assertiveness, all working in harmony to control them correctly. And when they step out of line, because they will need your grace. Depending on the seriousness of their infractions, they may or may not be considered worthy of your forgiveness. They need your forgiveness to stay in your presence, but they also need to be made an example of if they have sinned beyond your forgiveness. Now, I know what you're thinking. Dick, does this really work in every situation? Aren't there times when you should just keep quiet and let things happen? No, there is not. There's never a time to keep quiet. There's never a time to let things happen. You either control the situation or you let the situation control you. And if you're not flipping the script, then someone else is. That's just the way the world works. So, whether you're at a family gathering, a work meeting, a wedding, or even a funeral. You've got to be ready to take back control. You've got to be ready to flip the script, no matter how inappropriate it might seem. Because if you are still under the impression that inappropriate somehow still applies to you, then you are failing right here, right now. You need to go back and start this podcast from the beginning and try harder to internalize the wisdom and secrets that I am bestowing upon you for free. Because in the world of empowerment, there are no inappropriate moments. There are only opportunities to assert your dominance. So let's recap. Flipping the script is about seizing control of situations where you're not in charge. It's about interrupting, redirecting, and making sure the attention is always on you. Whether it's in a corporate setting, a social gathering, or a family dinner, flipping the script is one of the most powerful tools in your empowerment arsenal. And if you're not using it, then you are leaving power on the table. When power is left on the table, someone else will try to absorb it, and this is absolutely unacceptable. Now, I know what some of you are thinking, but Dick, what about those moments where it really feels like you have no control? What about when everything's stacked against you, when someone else is clearly running the show, and there's no room for you to take over? Surely, even you can't be empowered in those situations, right? Wrong. You see, the biggest mistake people make when they feel powerless is thinking they have no options. They get stuck in this mindset where they believe that because they're not officially in charge, they can't assert their dominance. But I'm here to tell you, that's a loser's mentality. No matter how impossible a situation seems, there's always a way to flip the script and take control. You just have to be bold enough to do it. Let me give you an example. One time, I found myself in the middle of what seemed like an impossible situation, an actual courtroom. That's right, folks, a courtroom. Now, I wasn't the one on trial, though I wouldn't have been sweating it even if I was. But I was called in to testify in some case that honestly had nothing to do with me. It was one of those situations where the judge is the undisputed authority in the room, and everyone is supposed to defer to him. Does Dick Force submit in such a situation and give up power to a beta male wearing a dress who happens to be holding a mallet? No, he does not. I don't care if you're wearing a robe, a dress, or sitting on a bench like your opinion matters. I knew the second I walked in there that I was going to take control of that room. It is an inevitable outcome. Always. So there I was, sitting in the witness stand, and the lawyer starts grilling me with these boring, repetitive questions. The judge is sitting there like he's the king of the world, and the jury looks half asleep. Now, most people in this situation would just answer the questions, sit quietly, and wait to be dismissed. But that's not what empowerment looks like. Empowerment looks like taking the reins, no matter where you are. So, I started answering the questions in the most confident, over-the-top way possible. I didn't just answer the lawyer's questions. I turned every answer into a speech. I talked about my personal philosophy about how I handle situations and how being in control is the key to success in life. At first, everyone was confused, but as I kept talking, I could see the jury starting to wake up. They were actually listening to me. Not to the lawyer, not to the judge, me. I was stealing the show in a room where no one thought it was possible. And then, when the lawyer tried to cut me off, I didn't let him. I kept talking over him because at that point, I was in charge of the narrative. Even the judge tried to intervene, but I didn't stop. I could tell they were all thinking, who does this guy think he is? But that's exactly the point. When you're empowered, you don't ask for permission to be in control. You just take it. By the time I was done, the jury wasn't paying attention to the case anymore. They were focused on me. I had hijacked the entire courtroom with nothing but my voice, my confidence, and exposing while controlling the insecurities of both the lawyer and the judge. And you know what? The judge didn't even attempt to reprimand me. Why? Because I was so commanding, so in control, that even he had to respect my authority. Even he had to fall in line because, as I have been saying, people want and need to be controlled. These posers, these self-righteous, insecure actors are no different. That's the power of flipping the script, even in a situation where everyone else would think control is out of reach. And at the root of all of this is empowerment. Now you might be thinking, but Dick, that's a courtroom. Surely there are rules you have to follow. Yes, there are rules. There are rules everywhere you look. Road signs, the TSA, even the very forces that dictate the natural functions of our universe. But rules are just suggestions for people who don't know how to take control. Any and all of those rules do not apply to those who understand the power and responsibility of empowerment. If you're waiting for the right moment to assert your dominance, you'll be waiting forever. The key is to create the moment. You have to seize the narrative, take over the conversation, and most importantly, make sure everyone in the room and everyone outside of that room in the surrounding radius, everyone that the sunlight touches, knows that you're the only one who matters. So, what have we learned today? We've learned that no situation is truly out of your control. Whether you're in a courtroom, a funeral, a family gathering, or just stuck in a conversation with someone who won't shut up, there's always a way to flip the script and take back control. You just have to be bold enough, confident enough, and unapologetic enough to make it happen. And let me tell you something, the more you practice this, the better you'll get. Flipping the script will become second nature. You will walk into every situation, no matter how bleak anyone else that is not experienced like you might perceive it to be, and immediately see an opportunity and immediately be able to assert your dominance. It is what you are here to learn and prepare for. Take advantage of this time you have with Dick 4. And once you start doing that, people will start looking to you as the leader, even in situations where you weren't supposed to be in charge. That's real, that's the goal, that is empowerment. In the next and final portion of this life-changing and awe-inspiring podcast, we're going to take everything we've learned about empowerment and tie it all together. We're going to talk about how to apply these techniques in every aspect of your life, from the boardroom to the bedroom, and make sure you're always the one in control. You won't want to miss it. Stay with me, because total empowerment is within your reach. All right, we've talked about empowerment in public spaces, dominating conversations, flipping the script when you're not in control, and even taking over in situations that seem impossible to manage, like a courtroom or a funeral. And if you've been paying attention, you've learned that there is no situation too small, too big, or too inappropriate for you to assert your dominance. But now it's time to bring it all together. I want to talk to you about how you can apply these techniques in every aspect of your life. And while you do this, you probably won't, but it is possible that you could start to see what it means to be Dick 4. That's right, from the boardroom to the bedroom, from the grocery store to the family dinner table, from social gatherings to even those quiet moments when you're alone with your thoughts. Total empowerment isn't something you turn on and off like a switch. It's a lifestyle. It's a mindset. It is not like our other podcasts here at the Boner Coin Tokens Life Advice Hotline, which teach you the proper way to handle, navigate, control, and dominate any individual situation imaginable, which we will continue to do. Empowerment as a lifestyle takes time and understanding to fully grasp what changes you have to make and how you have to make them to become more like Dick 4. And if you're not living it every moment of every day, then you're missing out. More than that, you are failing. You are failing yourself, your family, everyone who knows you that want and need you to dominate them. And you are failing the most important person in your life. You are failing Dick 4. You will be a cast-off, sent out in the dark wilderness as a failure and a Dick-marked disappointment if you cannot successfully navigate the information and actions needed to be more like Dick 4. Let's start with the boardroom. We've already touched on how to dominate at work, but I want to dig a little deeper. If you're not the one controlling the narrative in every meeting, if you're not the loudest voice in the room, then you're just another cog in the machine. Do you want to be another cog in the machine? No, you do not. You want to be the one turning the gears. So here's what you need to do. Every time you walk into a meeting, you walk in with the intention of taking over. You don't wait for permission to speak. You don't sit back and let others dictate the flow of conversation. You interrupt, you cut people off, and you steer the conversation where you want it to go. And if someone tries to talk over you, you talk louder. You take up space. You stare people down. You spread your musk both close and around the perimeter. You make sure that everyone in that room knows that you're not just there to participate. You are, in fact, there to lead. It's not about waiting for the right opportunity to assert yourself, it's about creating that opportunity. If you're waiting for the boss to call on you, then you might as well be standing in a line somewhere. Dominant and empowered people that are in control do not stand in lines. You must make yourself the center of attention over and above the object known as your boss by sheer force of will. You make sure they can't ignore you, because ignoring you isn't an option. And by the time the meeting's over, they won't remember what anyone else said, they'll remember you. But empowerment doesn't stop when you leave the office. Total empowerment follows you home. It's about being the one in control of every interaction, even in your personal life. Let's talk about the bedroom for a moment. Yeah, I went there. If you think empowerment is just for the workplace or social settings, you're missing the point. True empowerment extends into every part of your life, including your most intimate moments. You want to be empowered in the bedroom. Then you take charge. You set the tone. You don't wait for someone else to make the first move. You dominate the interaction, just like you would in any other situation. You make sure that even in your private life, you're the one calling the shots. Because, let's face it, people are attracted to confidence, to control, to dominance. And if you're not exuding that at every turn, then you're leaving power on the table. And it doesn't stop there. Let's talk about social media. Some of you are spending way too much time worrying about what people think of you online. You're crafting the perfect post, waiting to see how many likes or comments you get. But here's the reality. Social media is just another stage where you have no choice other than to assert dominance. You don't wait for validation from others. You create validation for yourself, and then you force it on those same others. When I post something, I don't care what people think. I don't care how many likes it gets. I post because my voice needs to be heard, and people will either listen or they won't, but they'll still see it. And that is enough. I'm not here to please the crowd. I'm here to own the crowd and to own the space. And you should be too. If you're still posting with the goal of getting likes at this point in your becoming like Dick 4 journey, then you have failed. Post because you have something to say and let the world react to it. And if they don't, who cares? You're not here for their approval, you're here to assert your power. Now let's bring it back to something I know we all love. Family gatherings. You've heard me talk about how to dominate conversations with your family, but there's more to it than just controlling the narrative. It's about making sure that every time you walk into that room, they know you're the one who's in charge. If you're not the one organizing the event, make it yours anyway. Take over the conversation. Decide what's happening next. If Aunt Carol is yammering on about her latest vacation or something else equally as offensive, interrupt her with something more interesting. Redirect the energy of the room to you. And if anyone gets upset, let them. They'll get over it. Because deep down, they'll respect you for it. And by the end of the night, they'll be looking to you for leadership, not Aunt Carol. It's the same thing in every social setting. Whether you're at a party, a wedding, or even just a casual get-together, you've got to walk in and own the place. And here's the key. You don't just act like you're in charge. You believe it. Because when you believe you're the most important person in the room, other people start to believe it too. And once they believe it, they follow your lead. That's how you dominate any space, any conversation, any interaction. And here's the final secret to total empowerment. You've got to make it part of your everyday routine. It's not enough to be empowered when it's convenient. You have to live it every day. That means when you wake up in the morning, you're already thinking about how you're going to dominate your day. You're not just going through the motions, you're creating opportunities for yourself to take control. When you're walking down the street, you're walking with purpose. You're taking up space. You're making sure that people notice you, even if they don't realize why. When you're at the store, you're not just shopping, you're commanding the aisles. You're moving through the world with the understanding that you're the one in charge of your life, and everyone else is just part of the landscape that you also happen to control. You see, the problem with most people is that they're passive. They let life happen to them. But total empowerment means that you're making life happen for you. You're not reacting to the world, you are shaping it. You're bending every situation, every interaction, every moment to fit your narrative. And that, my friends, is how you achieve true dominance. Now, I know what you're thinking, but Dick, isn't it exhausting to be in control all the time? Don't you ever want to just relax? Relax. Relaxation is for people who have given up. If you want to be empowered, you never relax. You stay sharp, you stay focused, and you keep taking control of every moment. Sure, you might have your downtime, but even in those moments, you're still the one running the show. You don't switch off, you just shift gears. And that's the difference between people who are empowered and people who are just floating through life. So, here's the challenge I'm going to leave you with. Tomorrow, I want you to wake up and decide that you're in charge of your day. I want you to walk into every room, every situation, every conversation with the mindset that you're the most important person there. And I want you to watch what happens. You'll see it immediately. People will start responding to you differently. They'll look to you for leadership even if they don't realize it. They'll start deferring to you, following your lead, because that's what people do when they're faced with true dominance. And if you're still on the fence, if you're still wondering whether this is really for you, let me remind you of one thing. People do not follow the timid. They follow the bold. So, if you want to be the one who's always in control, you've got to stop being afraid of stepping on toes. You've got to stop worrying about whether people like you. What matters is whether they respect you. And the only way to get respect is to take it. Now listen up, because I'm about to drop some advanced knowledge on you. What we've covered so far is basic empowerment, taking control of spaces you're already in. That's child's play. True empowerment, the kind that separates the weak from the powerful, comes from being able to dominate situations where you're not even supposed to be. That's right. I'm talking about walking into spaces where you weren't invited, where you don't belong, and still making it yours. Let me tell you about the time I went to a private gala I wasn't invited to. Now, this was one of those fancy high society events where everyone has a +1, and I didn't even know the host. But you think that stopped me? Hell no, I showed up in my finest suit, walked right through the doors like I owned the place, and made a beeline for the open bar. Within minutes, I had half the room convinced I was the keynote speaker. I wasn't on the guest list, but by the time I left, they were asking me to come back next year. You see, empowerment isn't just about taking control of spaces where you're already expected to be. It's about infiltrating spaces where you're not wanted, not expected, and making them your own. It's about showing up where no one thought you'd be and becoming the most important person in the room. The secret is simple. You act like you belong. You don't ask for permission. You don't wait for someone to acknowledge you. You walk in like you've been there 1,000 times before. And by the time you're done, people will be asking, who was that guy? They'll never know you weren't supposed to be there because you flipped the script. But why stop at social events? This technique works anywhere. You ever walked into a staff-only area in a store just to see if you could? Well, I have. And let me tell you, if you walk with confidence, no one questions it. People assume you belong because you carry yourself like you do. I walked into the back room of a fancy restaurant once, right into the kitchen, and started giving advice to the chefs. You know what they did? They listened. I wasn't a health inspector or a food critic. I was just a guy with unwavering confidence, and they couldn't tell the difference. Confidence is the key. Confidence is what makes the impossible possible. You could walk into a police station, and as long as you're acting like you belong there, like you're on official business, people will get out of your way. The more confidence you exude, the more people will assume you're the one running the show, even if you're not supposed to be anywhere near that room. Now, I'm not saying you should go out there and start breaking the law unless you can do it with style, of course. But I am saying that most boundaries are imaginary. Most doors are only locked because you think they are. People only assume they can keep you out because you haven't yet realized that you can walk through any door you want. You create your own permission to exist in places where others think you don't belong. And this applies to any situation. Let's say you find yourself in a high-stakes meeting where everyone is whispering about some big decision being made behind closed doors. You weren't invited into that room. So what? You knock on the door. Wrong, you don't knock, you just walk in. You tell them you've got something important to add to the discussion and you don't let them brush you off. And you know what happens? 9 times out of 10, they listen. 1 times out of 10, you are forced to be more forceful in your demonstration of power, turning that 9 times out of 10 into 100% of the time. They're too shocked not to. They've never seen someone with that much gall, that much unshakable confidence. You take over, and they will let you. Because really, what else can they do? They are not actually letting you. You are allowing them to think that they are letting you take over, but you are just taking over. And if they don't let you, well, that's when you flip the script. You make them look like they're in the wrong for excluding you. You ask them, "Are you sure you can handle this without me?" You throw just enough doubt into the room that suddenly they're the ones on the back foot. They don't know if they made the right call by keeping you out. And now you've got them right where you want them, questioning themselves, which means you're already in control. This, folks, is next-level empowerment. It's not about playing by the rules. It's about rewriting the rules as you go. You don't wait for someone to hand you an invitation to the table. You pull up a chair and make them wonder why they didn't invite you in the first place. It's about bending the world to your will and making every situation, every space yours to control. So, here's the final challenge I'm going to leave you with. This week, I want you to pick a space where you're not supposed to be, where no one expects you to take control, and I want you to own it. It could be anything. A meeting you're not invited to, a social event where you don't know anyone, hell, even a staff-only room at a department store. I want you to walk in, act like you belong, and take control of the situation. And when you do, I want you to remember one thing. It's not about getting permission. It's about creating your own permission. Because at the end of the day, people don't follow the rules. They follow power. They follow the person who acts like they were always supposed to be in charge. And that person, that's you. Now, if you're still listening, and you better be, you know what I'm going to say next. If you haven't hit that like button, subscribed, and turned on notifications by now, you're missing out. Every time you tune in, you're getting closer to becoming the most empowered, dominant version of yourself. And trust me, you need this, because you need more Dick 4 in your life. And always remember, folks, here at Boner Coin Tokens Life Advice Hotline, we live by one simple truth. The deeper you go, the more shallow it gets. This has been the most comprehensive and longest podcast I have ever given. But empowerment is something that demands this much attention, this much care, this much respect. And that's exactly what Dick 4 and you deserve. So go out there and claim it. We are here for you to better yourself. I am here for you to show you how. You can do this. Not as well as I can, but you can try. Call in and leave your questions on the hotline. I will answer the ones that are worthy of my time, talents, advice, and wisdom. See you next time.